Sigmund Freud, psychoanalytic criticism put on Freudian theories of psychology. He known as father of psychoanalysis. He lived during Victorian era and his theories constitute the basis of psychoanalytic criticism. The unconscious, subconscious, conscious. Freud's conscious mind is the rational conscious level of thinking. Since conscious is best understood as having an awareness of something, being able to call it to remind it would seem simple enough to qualify only those events we can recall as the activities of the human mind. The two functions that the capabilities of the conscious mind can address are: first is its ability to direct your focus, and second its ability to imagine that which is not real. Fred's subconscious mind. Its memory can be part of both conscious and conscious mind. Preconscious memory can be put into the conscious mind. Your subconscious is the storage point for any recent memories needed for quick recall, such as what your telephone number is or the name of a person you just met. It also holds current information that you use every day, such as your current recurring thoughts, behavior patterns, habits, and feelings. Freud's unconscious mind is thoughts, feelings, and urges outside of the conscious mind, often unpleasant or primitive urges such as pain, anxiety, and conflict. The unconscious mind is where all of our memories and past experience reside. These are those memories that have been represented through trauma and those that have simply been unconsciously forgotten and no longer important to us, or automatic thoughts. It is from these memories and experiences that our beliefs, habits, and behavior are formed. ID, ego, and superego. Freud maintained that our desires and our unconscious conflict give rise to three areas of the mind that wrestle for dominance as we grow from infancy to childhood to adulthood. ID. The personality is formed by three aspects. First is when a man says, I want it and I want it now, but unconscious. Second is pleasure and placebo. Third is irrational based desires, such as bodily needs like hunger, thirst, sleep, sex. Pure insect, disorganized, can conflict with itself. Search of libido or psychic energies, drag inaccessible side of your personality, and only aspect you are born with, like babies are all ID. Completely overpowering total self gratification, but completely not judgment, no moral consideration. Tries to resolve tension through primary processing, or imagining or dreaming the desired things is real. Ego, part of conscious, preconscious, unconscious mind, but operates mostly in conscious mind. Operates on reality principle, which balance reason and reality against the insistence of the ID. Satisfies the ID through delayed gratification and secondary process, the sharing tension between ID and ego through imagining objects in real world that will satisfy the ID. Mask for the ID by forming preconscious rationalization to make excuse. For example, I'm just a brutally honest person to mask for jealousy. Next is negotiations between the ID and superego, where judgment, tolerance, scientists of ideas, beliefs from respect for the superego. And then the last is defense mechanism are pure ego, but resent the unconscious realm of the ego. Superego formed during the extinguishment of the Oedipal complex. Internalized moral standards influenced by cultural, moral, societal standard of acceptability, influencing the ego by weighing the sense of right and wrong, part of the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious mind. Contains the ego ideal, rules and standards for good behavior. Contains the conscience, dictated by parents and society, generates guilt, regret, and etc. Also, there is a cultural ego where superego of the individual and the superego of society are interlocked.
Aristotle Classic Psychology Criticism on Tragedy. In the Poetics, Aristotle's famous study of Greek dramatic art, Aristotle compares tragedy to such other metrical forms as comedy and epic. He determines that tragedy, like all poetry, is a kind of imitation or mimesis, but adds that it has a serious purpose and uses direct action rather than narrative to achieve its ends. He says that poetic mimesis is imitation of things as they could be, not as they are, for example, of universals and ideals. Thus, poetry is a more philosophical and exalted medium than history, which merely records what has actually happened. According to Aristotle, the aim of tragedy is to bring about a catharsis of the spectators, to arouse in them sensation of pity and fear, and to purge them of this emotion so that they leave the theater feeling cleansed and uplifted, with a heightened understanding of the ways of gods and men. This catharsis is brought about by witnessing some disastrous and moving change in the fortunes of the drama's protagonists. Aristotle recognized that the change might not be disastrous, but felt this was the kind shown in the best tragedies. For example, Oedipus at Colonus was considered a tragedy by the Greeks, but does not have an happy ending. According to Aristotle, tragedy has six main elements, that is plot, character, diction, talk, spectacle or scenic effect, and song or music, of which the first two are primary. Most of the poetic is devoted to analysis of the scope and proper use of these elements, with illustrative examples selected from many tragic dramas, especially those of Sophocles, although Aeschylus, Euripides, and some playwrights whose work no longer survive are also cited. Several of Aristotle's main points are of great value for an understanding of Greek tragic drama, particularly significant in his statement that the plot is the most important element of tragedy. Tragedy is an imitation, not of man, but of action and life, of happiness and misery, and life consists of action, and its end is mode of activity, not a quality. Now, a character determines man's qualities, but it is their action that makes them happy or wretched. The purpose of action in the tragedy, therefore, is not the representation of character. Character comes in as contributing to the action. Hence, the incident and the plot are the end of the tragedy, and the end is the chief thing of all. Without action, there cannot be a tragedy. There might be one without a character. The plot is the first principle, and as it were the soul of a tragedy, character holds the second place.
Carl Jung was an early supporter of Freud because of their shared interest in unconscious. Most of Jung's assumptions of his analytical psychology reflect his theoretical differences. For example, while Jung agreed with Freud that a person's past and childhood experiences determine future behavior, he also believed that we are shaped by our future aspiration too. Theory of unconscious. Like Freud, Jung regarded the psyche as made up of a number of separate but interacting systems. The three main ones were the ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. According to Jung, the ego represents the conscious mind as it compresses thought, memory, and emotion a person is. aware of. The ego is largely responsible for feeling of identity and continuity. The personal unconscious is essentially the same as Freud's version of the unconscious. The personal unconscious contains temporality, forgotten information, and well as repressed memories. Jung also believed that the personal unconscious was much nearer the surface than Freud suggested, and Jungian therapy is less concerned with rep- repressed childhood experience. The collective unconscious is a level of unconscious shared with other members of the human species comprising latent memories from our ancestral and evolutionary past. According to Jung, the human mind has innate characteristics imprinted on it as a result of evolution. This universal predisposition stems from our ancestral past. However, more important than isolated tendencies are those aspects of the collective unconscious that have developed into separate subsystems of the personality. Jung called these ancestral memories and image archetypes. Archetypes are images and thoughts which have universal meaning across cultures, which may show up in dreams, literature, arts, or religion. Jung believes symbols from different cultures are often very similar because they have emerged from archetypes shared by the whole human race. Jung claimed to identify a large number of archetypes, but paid special attention to four. The first is the persona. The persona is the outward face we present to the world. It conceals our real self, and Jung described it as the conformity archetypes. This is the public space or role a person present to others as someone different to we really are. The second is anima. Anima is the mirror image of our biological sex. There is the unconscious feminine sides in males and the masculine tendencies in women. And the third is the shadow. This is the animal side of our personality. It is the source of both our creative and destructive energies. In line with evolutionary theory, it may be that Jung's archetypes reflect predisposition that once had survival value. And finally, the fourth is self, which provides a sense of unity in experience. For Jung, the ultimate aim of every individual is to achieve a state of selfhood, and in this respect, Jung is moving in the direction of more humanist orientation.
Jacques Lacan, with a French psychoanalyst, who reconceptualized Freud using post-structuralism. Lacan rejected attempts to link psychoanalysis with social theory, saying the unconscious is the discourse of the other, that human passion is structured by the desire of others, and that we express deep feelings through the relay of others. He thus saw desire as a social phenomenon and psychoanalysis as a theory of how the human subject is created through social interaction. Desire appears through a combination of language, culture, and the space between people. Lacan focused largely on Freud's work and deep structures and infant sexuality, and how the human subject becomes an other through unconscious repression and stemming from the mirror face. The conscious ego and unconscious desire are thus radically divided. Lacan considered this perpetual and unconscious fragmentation of the self as Freud's core discovery. Lacan thus sought to return psychoanalysis on the unconscious using Ferdinand de Saussure, linguistic, structural anthropology, and post-structural theories. Lacanian psychoanalysis is rather ruthless in its aggressive challenging that seeks to dismantle that imaginary sense of completeness, or as in the mirror phase, and to remove illusions of self-mastery through a mirror image. A strong ego is seen as defensive, decayed, and expressing it during analysis is seen as resistance to change. Fear of disintegration and lack drives the person to realize themselves in another imaginary individual. Lacan would cope with transference by suddenly terminating the session. The odious crisis precipitates the child into the symbolic stage, from which they can become a speaking subject. It is not just the father, but language that creates the division. Language is used to represent desire and is an intersubjective order of symbolization and force that perpetuates the love of the father. The father prohibits the desire of the mother, subverting this desire into language. As desire and connection is created through language, Lacan explained this through Saussure signifier and signified, which are seen not as referring to subject but to psychic representation created by their interplay and by culture and history. Within language, the subject vainly tries to represent itself. The subject is an effect of the signifier put into language. Language becomes a mask to disguise the impossibility of desire. The unconscious is less something inside the person as an intersubjective space between people. According to Lacan, the unconscious is structured like language. Lacan sees the child not as the agent of symbolization but as the recipient of desire from another. When the child plays with things disappearing and finding them again, they are recreating the missing mother. Lacan has also been criticized in theorizing of sexuality and unconscious, as well as the limitation of his use of linguistics. The structuring of the unconscious and tying it to language is criticized as simplification and subversion. Many critics have pointed out that the unconscious is highly symbolic and resistant to syntax, reformulating Freud's unconscious or conscious dualism as a linguistic relationship is a bridge too far. Lacan's equation of language and culture does not take account of power, ideology, and social institution, each of which may also contribute toward trauma and internal division. There is no attention paid to how the subject act in individual global social situation, nor are the force of culture and politics considered in any detail. Lacan fails to recognize that people are capable of self-reflection and self-actualization and hence can escape his impossible trap. If we are trapped and all image is distortion, then Lacan himself was trapped and his own views distort. Any theory of inevitable blindness thus defeats itself.